Okay, this is a guide to the June 2010 spoken language question. This is a copy of the mark scheme, which suggests what examiners should be looking for when they're marking your response. So it says that text A contains discourse features common in spontaneous unplanned speech. Text B is a prepared speech, and therefore the material has been shaped, and so is in grammatically correct English. So the first one is maybe likely to look at dialect, any fillers, things that are non-fluency features in spontaneous speech, and text B, I'm more likely to look at the fact that it's shaped and organised, so the paragraphing, for example, to take the audience through the speech naturally. Semantic field of text A shows connection with educational topic, and you could probably compare this with text B. Adjacency pairs in text A, mainly of question and answer. Use of topic-specific vocabulary in text A, so assignments, clinical portfolio. Because they both know the topic very well, they're able to use that kind of jargon. Use of colloquial language in text A because of the informality. Use of repetition in text B, and use of parallel phrasing in text B. These are the things that candidates may refer to. It might be that you look at more, and probably you should be looking at a little bit more than is suggested, and alternative things as well. Okay. This is the examiner's report. So in detail, the examiner has gone into the aspects of the two texts. So overall, candidates responded to this question well, and most had a clear idea of how to structure and organise their response effectively. If you're not sure about how to organise your response, then I've made a video on VideoScribe, which is on the website, so you can see the different stages you should go through, and I've given examples of intros, paragraph writing, and conclusions. Very few wrote two separate analyses with a final comparative section, which is good. You should be comparing throughout. Although a few commented on text A first and then incorporated comparisons while discussing text B. Most, though, tried to integrate comparisons throughout the responses, which is what you should be doing. It would have helped some candidates, however, to start their more detailed analyses of the extracts more quickly than they did. Sometimes candidates wrote quite lengthy introductory sections, sometimes as much as a page, discussing audience, context, and possibly purpose in general terms that added little, if anything, to their responses. I think they've got a good point about your intro. You should try and make it as concise as possible, but you still need to get in all the elements of audience and purpose and context, just to include it all in the intro, so that then when you're discussing it, you can always connect back to it, but do try to be concise. If you have a look on the VideoScribe video I've done, I've written an example introduction, and it is very short. It's a lot shorter than what some of you are writing at the moment, so you should take a look at it just to see how you might be able to reduce your own slightly. Candidates were often quite assured in their identification of features of speech, though sometimes explanations still tended to be rather general and unspecific. For example, comments such as overlaps are either because Sue wants to take the floor or because she wants to offer support to her friend add little to the analysis. What the student has done there is describe what overlaps do generally without applying it to the extract. You need to pick out the specific overlap and discuss why it's being used in that context and in that situation. There was also a tendency to waste too much time, sometimes whole paragraphs, debating who is the dominant speaker to the expense of exploring the point of view and how it is expressed. Dominant speaker, mention it once, don't do it again. Don't keep going into dominant speaker. If you're looking at something like an interruption, or how much of the turn taking is taken by one of the speakers, then the dominant speaker is obviously really important to that point, but you shouldn't be using it at every point, and some of you often fall back on that, so avoid doing that. You need to explore how they've expressed their point of view and how they've put that across. Forget the dominance, okay? Do your turn-taking interruptions, that shows dominance, that often connects to dominance, but the other stuff doesn't, so don't keep referring back to that. Many candidates commented on the dialect shown by the speakers in text A, and that it revealed that they came from a particular area, such as Yorkshire or the Black Country, although a number were sure that they came from Essex. Very few picked up that YER was more of a sociolect than an area dialect. Quite a few were certain it was a sign of their being working class, lower middle class, or lazy. It would be helpful if candidates were warned not to make pointless sociological deductions. Be very careful about accents. We've all got them. We all pronounce things slightly differently. You shouldn't make generalisations. If you remember the lesson when I was saying grass, bath, we automatically have those associations with certain words being posh or not, as my accent might prove. However, it really isn't indicative of anything. There are a lot of people living up in Newcastle who do not have a traditional Geordie accent, but aren't posh. It's just to do with their area and also the social sort of standing as well. So don't get drawn into discussing accent in terms of generalisations of area or class. It can vary within different families or different individuals, and also the context. Different accents are going to be stronger or weaker depending on who they're talking to and in what situation they're in. Obviously spot that accent is prevalent. If you don't know what it is, don't add a name to it. Just say that you've spotted some accent and it's clear that they're comfortable in this situation, and they're speaking to somebody familiar, okay, and that's why their accent's coming out. It could be the case that it still comes out in sort of your more formal situation. So just comment on why you think that is. Just steer away from identifying what accent it is unless you're certain, because if you get it wrong, that's not going to be great. And again, take the examiner's advice. Don't suggest that they're lazy because they're not pronouncing something as you would expect it to be spelt. It's just normal of us all. Okay, so it was pleasing that most candidates were good at identifying rhetorical features in B, such as sentence structure, asynthetic lists, parallel constructions, appeals to audience, and providing apt examples. Analysis sometimes lacked detail, okay, be very careful of this. Very few, for example, commented on the change from in Britain to for Britain in the last sentence. Many appeared not to know the difference between compound and complex sentences. Take a look at the sentence help sheet from last unit if you're unsure which is which. And some spent too much time deciding whether adjectives were pre- or post-modifying rather than looking at the effects of the particular word choices. So what your examiner is subtly saying there is that it's enough to say adjectives and consider the effect. The effect is the important part of all of this analysis. It was rather surprising that a number of candidates thought Tony Blair was the speaker in text B, particularly as the question told them it was Gordon Brown. Read the question, okay? It was also worth reminding candidates that when using a quotation for support or illustration, rather than simply writing the first word or two followed by a series of dots, it is important that they make sure that the feature being commented on appears in the section quoted. Needless to say, lengthy quotation should be avoided. Okay, I have seen this from some of you. Some of you find rule of three, okay, so you put the first part of the rule of three and then put ... to show that it continues. I need it all. If you're commenting on it all, it needs to be there. Again, this has been seen with alliteration, so you're quoting part of it, but I don't get the second part where the alliteration continues. Make sure that you select your quotes carefully and include all the bit that you're commenting on. Equally, don't quote something in full and then analyse the different parts of it, just analyse the different parts of it. Okay, there is no advantage in you putting the full sentence and then breaking it down. It wastes time. Go straight in for the close analysis that you want to on individual words or phrases. The answers that attracted the lower marks tended to be lists of features of speech with few or no examples. Remember to quote. Some of you are still doing this. You're going through a whole text without any quotes. The quotes need to be there. Lists of features of speech, again, suggest that they're not being analysed. So you're listing them, you're finding them, brilliant, you're showing knowledge, but you're not going to get very high up the mark scheme unless there's analysis there. There was some confusion over Kat's dislike of classroom-based education, as some candidates asserted that she hated education altogether and compared this with Brown's approval. Simplistically, education was uni and placement was not. Yeah, I guess be careful of the nuances of the topic area if that applies to your text. And actually, if you look at Kat's response, she doesn't hate it. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, and both are discussed. Technical spelling was frequently inaccurate, and many candidates spelt elision. You know this, you know you do this, I've pointed it out a few times. Please learn it and get it right. And had problems with repetition, okay, get that one down. Simile, I've seen that before. Metaphor, I haven't seen that, but check it anyway. and spontaneous, okay? And also spelt Britain, Britain, even though it appeared in the text several times. If you're quoting anything from the text, be really careful about copying it down exactly as it should be. Overall, more able candidates showed us the sophisticated grasp of features of speech and were able to integrate the comparisons to great effect. Analysis of attitudes in these responses were thoughtful and detailed. Weaker candidates were at least able to identify a range of features, even if their ability to comment on effects was limited. You need to look at the effect side of things. Okay, I'm going to go on now to create a video which looks at 2 different responses and what they've done in each. So I'll probably have to do a separate video for each. Take a look at those. These are responses to the question that's been discussed here, and there are things to be tweaked in each, and I'm going to point those out. I'll also point out what they have done well, so take a look at those 2 videos. Okay.